So let's go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauren Payne, and I'm the Assistant Vice President in the Malone Center for Career Engagement here at Furman. We're super excited to welcome all of you to tonight's webinar, Careers at Arthrex. Last spring, myself and a few other administrators here at Furman had the opportunity to visit Arthrex's headquarters located in Naples, Florida, and we were just so blown away by the campus there. Just such amazing facilities and all of the great career opportunities that are available at the Arthrex organization, that we're super excited for tonight's event to provide our students with an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Arthrex and to meet some of our alumni and friends that are currently working in a variety of positions at Arthrex. So we're going to get started here with some introductions, and we do have a few questions that we want to start off with, but please feel free, if you all have any questions, feel free to use the chat function, and you can write your questions into the chat, and we will make sure to save some time to address those questions before the end of tonight's event. So at this time, I want to go ahead and introduce our moderator, Dr. Paul Wagenknecht. Dr. Wagenknecht is a chemistry professor here at Furman and actually was the professor of one of our panelists, Robert, tonight. So I'm excited to reunite them as well. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Wagenknecht.
And I also am a Furman grad, and let's see, I want to introduce each one of the faculty members, the panel members, maybe Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I actually am not a Furman alumni, but I'm here because at Arthrex, I work as a medical illustrator. Is that all you wanted me to?
Yeah, I think that's good. Sarah?
Sure. My name is Sarah Lusk. I graduated in 2008 from Furman, and I work in HR, human resources, as an employee relations specialist.
Right. Gil?
Gil McSwain. I graduated from Furman, class of 2000, so it's been a minute, with a business administration degree, but like a lot of reps I work with, I originally had started off pre-med, and I work for MVP Orthopedics, which is a sales distributor for the Arthrex products, and I run their trauma and extremities division.
And Robert.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. My name is Robert Benedict. I graduated 2008, same year as Sarah. Fortunate to be here, but I've been with Arthrex for about 13 and a half years, and my most recent role is a group product manager with biologics and vet systems.
All right, Robert, can you give us an introduction to Arthrex?
Of course. I feel really fortunate to provide an introduction. The company was founded in 1981 by our current owner, founder, Reinhold Schmieding. He developed the company in Munich, Germany, and moved back in the mid-80s to the U.S. and relocated to Naples, Florida in 1991. So since then, obviously I wasn't a part of this at the time, but the company, Arthrex, has essentially developed the field of arthroscopy. Orthopedics and the sports medicine is a critical function within our healthcare system, and Arthrex is one of the pioneers that helped to develop this entire industry. Today, we're creating about 1,000 to 1,200 products per year. And we get to essentially stick to our core mission, which is helping surgeons treat their patients better. And how we view that internally is it's essentially our calling to be involved and helpful towards our surgeons and making sure that they can effectively do their jobs. Gil is a critical function in that from a sales perspective, because not just as a salesperson, they are actually integrating new products into these procedures and making sure the best technology is being used. So just a really brief introduction, but Arthrex remains privately held, and Reinhold is critically involved in the day-to-day operations of our business. A really incredible person. If you Googled him, it's remarkable what he's created. So we get to certainly be a part of something pretty unique, and the culture of Arthrex is also rather unique, which I hope we get to chat about tonight as well.
Great, thank you, Robert.
Sure.
So I think each one of you have given your job title at Arthrex. Like each of you to kind of walk us through what you really do and what a typical day in the office looks like for you. Gil, I'm going to start with you because you're probably maybe the least typical.
Sure. So, medical device sales is kind of the buzzword for what we do, but I don't think it necessarily captures what the role entails. Something that's a little bit different about Arthrex is we call our team, once they've passed the training and qualifications, technology consultants, because that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. You're in the operating room working with physicians, live patient on the table, and what people don't think they realize is individually as representatives, we see hundreds and thousands of these procedures, and sometimes the physician themselves has only seen it once or twice if they're a new user. So they're going to look to you to know anatomy, the procedure, the product, the bailouts, the options. You're an integral part of that operating room staff. So it's more than trying to sell a customer this pen, as they always say in those sales classes. There's just really a lot more to it. The training's extensive. After 6 to 8 months, you spend an entire week on campus in Naples, going through a 5-day training. And prior to this, I was with Smith and Nephew, and the training that's available to you at Arthrex is bar none. We still every month have a monthly assignment that covers a new product or procedure, just to always make sure that our representatives are becoming better at their craft. For me and my sales force, we start our days, usually I'm up in the 5:15, 5:30 a.m. hour to get up, get out the door, grab a cup of coffee, and head to the first facility for a day of procedures. Surgery typically starts at 7 a.m. or 7:30 a.m., depending on the facility. And you're there till we're done. I mean, I'm still in my scrubs now because I came straight from a facility to hop on the call with you all. And it may not be just one facility. You're still fitting in your sales calls. You're going to go to lunch with physicians, dinners with physicians, to do product demos. We have at our distributorship in Tampa, we've got a 5-station cadaver lab on site with cadaveric samples readily available to practice different techniques and try out different procedures. It's something that's really valuable to our physicians. So that's part of your day, depending on how the schedule shakes up. And it's not uncommon for you as a rep to visit 3 or 4 facilities for 3 or 4 different customers during the day. It's
great. Yeah.
Monday through Friday. Sometimes it's the weekends. Sometimes it's late at night. You kind of work till the work is done.
Great. Thanks, Gil. So Sarah, your role and typical day in the office.
Yeah, so I'm employee relations, which is within the HR department, and I work at our Pendleton campus, which is probably 30, 45 minutes away from Furman. And I guess, I was a business administration major at Furman, really unsure of what I wanted to do with that even. But my first job was in human resources. It was kind of the first offer I got, so I took it, and it's been wonderful. I joined Arthrex in March and haven't been there too long, but it's an amazing company. I want to retire from there, I say. So typical day at Arthrex, my hours are 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. But when you work in a manufacturing facility, you are used to getting calls, texts, emails during off hours. And especially in HR, you need to respond if it's an employee emergency. So 7 a.m., 4 p.m., I get into work, something that I wasn't used to at the beginning of my career. You have a lot of modes of communication that you have to keep up with. You have to keep up with your cell phone, your office phone, your email, your text message, your instant messenger. So I make sure that, everybody's been communicated back to that reaches out. I attend some production meetings so that supervisors can talk with me about any employee issues they're having. Typically, it's going to be, attendance write-ups, performance issues, promotions, pay questions. And then a lot of the day is met as meeting with new employees, walking the production floor, creating relationships. I manage about 200 employees underneath my HR umbrella.
Great, thank you. And Rebecca, your role in a typical day in the office.
Yeah, my role at Arthrex is a medical illustrator. So that in my day allows me a lot of flexibility to work on lots of different illustrations and projects at a time. I work closely with product managers on a day-to-day basis, like Robert Benedict, for example. I could be working with him and also working with people from Med Ed. And our illustration projects cover a lot of different things, such as surgical technique guides and advertisements and brochures, and even event banners. My time in a day that I work is usually 8 to 5. And at the start of every project that we get, we have a kickoff meeting, and that's where product managers and clinical specialists will review the storyboard, and they'll talk about details that an illustration will entail. And I'll often share many drafts with product managers and medical education staff on a day-to-day basis, getting their feedback on whether or not they think what we've created is accurate. And then once the project stakeholders have shared their satisfaction with illustrators or with the illustrations, the project goes through a validating system, and that's where legal and compliance and regulatory can all give their thumbs up on whether illustrations can then be public facing. So in a day-to-day, we use a few different programs like Autodesk 3ds Max, which is a modeling and rendering program, and we render out still images of the products that are made at Arthrex, and we then place that and composite it in Photoshop, for example, and then we can paint additional details on top of that, including skin incision and sutures and soft tissue structures to create like the full display of illustrations.
Great, thank you. And Robert.
Rebecca was really, I think, bashful to talk about how awesome what they do. I mean, it's just incredible. So this is just an example. This is the back of one of the journals that I read on a monthly basis, but this is just some of the stuff that they can create. Just incredible artistic value, super high level. And Rebecca, you deserve a ton of kudos. But so my job as product manager is to interact with surgeons and generate ideas with them, and then working closely with our engineering team to bring those ideas to life. So all of those products that I just shared with you, those all went through a surgeon development cycle, engineering product development cycle, and then eventually went to the sales force for market and bringing those products for sale. And that's when also the product management group would interact with Gil and other sales managers throughout the country or globe to ensure that they're educated on how to sell the product and bring it to life. So the product management role is really interacting with a lot of core teams and stakeholders at Arthrex to innovate and create all these new products. I mentioned about 1,000 new products per year. So to do that, that's a lot of people are involved, a few on the call here, of course, but product management is expected to kind of help manage their particular core business products and bring those to sale.
Great, thanks everyone. So next thing I'm going to ask each of you is, how did you learn about the medical device industry and what brought you to Arthrex? A couple of you touched on this already. Let's see, I'll start with you, Rebecca.
Sure. I actually first heard about Arthrex through an illustration professor at my college. He was just seeking out opportunities for his students, and since the field is so small, it's so niche, you really have to think about what fields to find yourself in. And he told me about the medical device industry, and he had known somebody who worked at Arthrex, and I never ended up finding her, but I saw a posting on LinkedIn in the future after talking to him and applied there. But typically medical illustrators will also look in fields like medical legal, textbook companies, and medical publishers. But in general, I always had a love for art and science. And it was my sophomore year of high school that I first heard about medical illustration as a possible career path, because I had never heard about it previously. And that kind of like helped me structure the courses I would take in my high school career to kind of gear me in that direction. So then I started looking at possible schools to study that. There aren't very many schools that offer the program, so a lot of students will end up majoring in art and minoring in science, or majoring in science and minoring in art to help create that path for themselves too.
That's a neat insight, Rebecca. Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm not as heavily involved in the medical device industry as the other folks on this call. I joined Arthrex because I heard it was just an amazing company to work for, and it's true. You know, a friend knew that I was looking for a new position, and they saw the job posting, told me to apply. I never thought I'd get a call, and here I am. So all that to say, if you see something you're interested in and you don't think that you're qualified or you can get it, always apply. You never know what'll happen. But I'll let these medical experts spend more time on why they're in the medical field, because really I feel like I'm more in the HR field.
And Robert.
Actually, I think that's a really good point, because Arthrex is more than just medical device. We're a really integral member of just the education community. So of course, supporting that, HR is a really critical function. We have a lot of important business and finance functions as well that, of course, we as a business have to manage. So it's not just medical device. I mean, that's obviously how we generate revenue, but there are really critical functions to what we do that we just cannot operate. And some would even think that we innovate more on the medical education side than even product, because Gil would say, have a very aggressive training campaign that he has to dedicate tens of hours per month just for more of education to accommodate all of these new products being learned. But anyway, I digress. How did I learn about it? I was pre-med at Furman and was attending various cases at Greenville Hospital System, and just had a really incredible experience and loved that conversation between the surgeon and their patient, and just being in the OR. And so I found Arthrex. I just found an internship. I was supposed to go to University of Mississippi for a graduate program back in 2008 in that fall after I graduated. But as soon as I started at this internship and a couple really important interactions I had on campus, I couldn't imagine leaving. And so for me, it was just a dramatic shift in terms of my goals. And I was like, I'll just give this a few years. But the more I spent time in the field and working with these incredible people at this company, I just couldn't imagine leaving. So that was kind of what brought me to Arthrex, is that I was fortunate enough to have an internship and just realized that I couldn't imagine going elsewhere.
Thanks, Robert. And Gil?
So my path to medical device was a little more winding. I didn't enter the industry until I was about 30 years old. But back when I was a student at Furman University, my father's actually a retired general surgeon. And as successful as he was at that, his only career advice was go to med school. And part of that process was working in the hospital over the summers and during my breaks from Furman in the operating room. It was a minimum wage job, and it was cleaning the operating rooms after the surgeries and setting up the anesthesia machines. And it was a good experience. But although starting off pre-med, it didn't really take. I really enjoyed my business classes that were part of the liberal arts education, and decided to switch to business administration. In the process, I did an internship in the insurance industry, and that led to a 9-year career in insurance and payroll sales. So it gave me outside sales experience. But when we got to about 2007, 2008, all of my customers were construction companies. And I think if you remember back then, construction was not doing too well. And it was time to think about career options. I got to know the CFO of the largest orthopedic practice in town, and was just talking to him over lunch one day about sales opportunities in the medical field because I always enjoyed being in the OR and the kind of a different world, but just the dance that is the OR. And he mentioned he knew Smith and Nephew was looking for a trauma rep. Interviewed for that role, and what actually got me the job was the fact that I had been in an operating room. So my minimum wage mop and bucket job actually got me into medical device sales. And I was with Smith and Nephew Trauma for 10 years when the local distributorship came knocking and recruited me to run their trauma and distal extremities division. So I've been with Arthrex technically for about 3.5 years now, and it's been a great run. Just a completely different culture from Smith and Nephew, different philosophy, but I say that in a good way, especially with the education side of it. I think Robert touched on it a little bit, but there's an entire division at Arthrex dedicated to medical education. We have physicians and physicians assistants on staff that are part of the med ed program, let alone instructors. There's almost every day of the year something going on at Arthrex related to medical education. So it's not just the devices, the sales. It's a very large division at Arthrex that serves an important function.
Great, thank you. And so a couple of you have touched on culture already. So we're going to get to that next. I just want to really quickly mention to the attendees that I know the chat questions are starting to roll in. We're going to bring those up after we go through just a little bit more of a series of questions with the panelists, and then we'll get to your chat questions. So just wanted you to be aware of that. We're not ignoring those questions at this point. All right. So culture. For any of you, what is the culture like at Arthrex, and what characteristics do you need to be successful at Arthrex?
I can start. So in my experience, I've worked on site at a lot of companies. I was a project manager, so I got to work with about 15 to 20 different manufacturing companies before working here at Arthrex. And all that to say, the environment at Arthrex is so positive, so respectful. It's really just a nice place to work. People are nice to each other, and believe it or not, that's not the case at a lot of jobs. So, it's the place where you say good morning to everyone you see. How are you? You smile. There is integrity is 100%, honesty. Everyone that works at Arthrex hold themselves to really high standards, and we hold each other to really high standards as well. So I've been nothing but impressed. And those are some of the reasons why I love the culture.
I think a big one is the Arthrex being private. We're not always about profits. I know that's an important part of business and making sure that we can keep the lights on, but we've focused on that core mission that I mentioned earlier about just helping surgeons treat their patients, right? So if we're true to our mission, profits will follow, and we just need to continue to innovate and grow. From my perspective, the culture has always just been a family. Families have problems. Their families aren't perfect. There's tiffs that happen, right? But Arthrex largely operates where those situations we work through and we grow, and that helps develop leadership roles, that helps develop people into their careers and create opportunity in many ways. But it is a family environment where the company really cares about our success personally and professionally, and they do a lot to ensure that we have the resources available to take care of our families and do what's best for ourselves at work, investing in our future, our goals that we might have in our career, but also giving us the latitude to do what's best for our families.
All right. I guess for any of you, how did your Furman experience help prepare you for your role at Arthrex? And are there any particular classes or experiences that you would recommend our students get involved with?
Well, I would definitely say, Dr. Wagenknecht, your chemistry classes were always amazing. So let's start there. Learned a lot from you. So thank you very much, sir. I would say that Arthrex is obviously a science-based company. We're a medical in the medical field, and all of those would be applicable, every scientific component of that. But there are so many other opportunities beyond just maybe the what comes to mind immediately. I mean, HR, obviously, medical illustrator, just incredible, just array of opportunity, sales and business. So for me, that one of the most impactful conversations I ever had was Dr. Konke. I believe he's still a professor there in econ, and learning more just about how business can operate. And that's a really critical function of just understanding that background. Arthrex is a private company and profits don't come first, but they're critical, and we need to understand how flow of cash can really affect what that mission is and how we can support it. So that was probably an eye-opening experience for me.
My advice to the students that are on this call is, looking back, I wish that I'd taken more risks when I was in college in terms of doing internships that I wasn't sure. I thought it might be something I'd be interested in, but if I wasn't sure, I kind of stayed real safe in my classes and the type of work that I did. I kind of kept on going back to the same job every summer between college years, and I really should have gone out and done internships and learned more about myself and what I'd want to do in the future. So I'd encourage you to take some risks in that area. I'll also say not everyone will agree with me, but I was super stressed about my GPA all through Furman, and I did not go to grad school afterwards. Otherwise, it would have been a lot bigger deal. But I mean, I'll just say don't lose sleep at night completely, because I swear I've never been asked my GPA for a job before. So I just snuck by with a 3.0, maybe a 2.99, and life is good. So don't worry if you were that kind of student like I was.
Coming from HR, I love that. That's great.
It's the truth. We tell the truth here.
Don't look up my transcript, please.
Likewise. I'll touch on just the sales side of things because it was a mixture of courses that really came in handy for me. I spent the first 2 years of my experience at Furman as a pre-med student. So I took biology pre-med, chemistry pre-med, physics, before making a formal switch to the business administration department. But, biology, anatomy, those courses all are very important to what I do on a day-to-day basis, tied in with the business administration side of things, understanding profit loss statements, marketing, all of that comes into play in the things we do. I work with a lot of smaller accounts that we're looking at their entire package to see what makes sense, where can we help you in your pricing, where does it make sense for us, and the whole kind of package comes into play, along with medical reimbursement. Just understanding the business side of things outside of the products themselves is pretty important.
Hey, if I could interject, maybe Gil, you probably could speak to relationship as maybe just as critical to everything. You could know everything there is to know about anatomy or product, but a really important part of the conversation is just being in that OR and having a conversation, being able to talk about day-to-day things. I mean, please share some experience.
So, I'll go to not everybody wants to hear this from somebody in sales management, but I believe that 75% of this business for me is relationship building. If they don't want you in their OR, you're never going to move the needle with the product. And learning, it's not just the physician who gets to make that decision. I work every day with every level of staff, OR administrators, developing those relationships, even relationships with your competitors. It all comes into play. And those life skills and people skills are vitally important in the medical device sales side of things, because when you start, they don't know you from Adam, and you need to earn your way into a high stress environment. They're OR. When it comes right down to it, that physician with the knife in his hand is responsible for the patient on that table, and they're putting their trust in you that you have what they need, their backup plan, and can answer any question that comes off the top of their mind.
And Rebecca, I think you can comment here too on just in general classes and experiences that our Furman students should look for.
Yeah, I think if there's any students interested in coming into this field, like it's never too late to start, honestly. For most students, I would recommend like maybe start to gear your classes towards art and science. Like you're probably already taking plenty of science courses, but in this field, we typically look for people who have art classes and experience in drawing and painting and color theory, graphic design and 3D modeling. And a lot of times there are people who come into this field who don't necessarily have a strong foundation in art, but it's something that you can build and grow upon. And that you can start with like building a strong portfolio, like creating artwork that really portrays your ability to display realism and detail and color. But beyond those things, I do think another good piece of advice for anybody joining this industry at Furman now is that it's really helpful to keep to really attain that scientific knowledge when you're in the medical device field, specializing in orthopedics. Like knowing your foundational anatomy when discussing and communicating related products is very essential, especially like being an illustrator. Like a lot of times, like my specialty is what I create, not necessarily the language that we speak, but being able to communicate with that basis really helps create a stronger understanding. So I would say that that would be my piece of advice.
Yeah, and I'll just mention, I just recently had a Furman student who just graduated. She was a chemistry major. She did research in my group, and she had a full art portfolio by the time she graduated. And she actually went to, she's in graduate school in architecture right now. And she actually drew some artwork for one of our papers that actually ended up being on the cover of a journal, but it was scientific illustration. But she had this she showed me her portfolio at one point. And so I say that to the Furman students because here's somebody who was a chemistry major, right, a science major, who was doing all these other things on the side, getting stuff published in the Echo. I think that's what it's called, the art journal at Furman. There might be another one or something. And so those opportunities do exist for you all here. Sarah, I wonder if you can maybe talk about internship and entry-level opportunities at Arthrex and what you'd be looking for in the talent that you hire either for interns or full-time.
Sure. So, so I can speak more to our facility over in Pendleton, right next door to Anderson there, in case you've never heard of Pendleton. But we do hire quite a few interns and co-ops. And from my experience, Furman doesn't do a whole lot of co-op opportunities. That's more of a Clemson thing with the engineering department there. But as far as internships, Arthrex is a big believer in interns. I know here in South Carolina, we have about 12. And in Florida, I want to say there's like 150. I mean, it's crazy. So, but here in South Carolina, we have internships within human resources. We have a lot of engineering co-ops and internships, which I know that can be a little tough with Furman majors, not really having, the engineering focus like Clemson does. But some other areas that Furman students might want to look into. I had never really heard of supply chain when I was at Furman, and supply chain is a really cool job to have because you're working with the companies that are providing the materials that you're then manufacturing with. So it's making sure that I guess you're dealing with prices and making sure that the optimal product is being purchased and that it's within the budget and all that. So it is more of a business related function. In case you are a business administration major, supply chain might be cool for you to look into. Accounting and finance, we don't really have internships, unfortunately, right now. Of course, that could change and probably will change in the future. And another area that folks at Furman might want to think about that I wasn't really aware of as a student was environmental health and safety. It's huge, especially in manufacturing, but just, companies in general, safety is of huge importance. Safety should always be number one at any company you work with, manufacturing or not. So environmental health and safety, you're working with employee safety, you're making sure that, any materials, chemicals, are following, legal regulations in terms of auditing them and making sure that they're stored correctly, that sort of thing. So that might be another area that you want to look into. And as far as getting hired at Arthrex, I'm very impressed by how many interns and co-ops get hired. So if you want to work at Arthrex as soon as possible, I would really pursue the internship co-op route because we are able to hire so many. That's really the best way to get your foot in the door if you're entry level. Because most positions, if you're not intern or co-op in South Carolina, at least you really do have to have a little bit of experience. If it's all right, I have a couple, I made a short list of recommendations for students that are interviewing and putting together resumes, that sort of thing. Some qualities that Arthrex looks for greatly is going to be, we want problem solvers. We don't want folks who just point to an issue and say it's there. We need you to point to the issue and then tell us what to do to fix it, really, no matter what department you work in. If you're an intern, please be proactive. And if your schedule isn't full, let your manager know. They'll find something for you to do, or they'll lend you to another department. But it can be frustrating sometimes to have an intern who has time but isn't being proactive on filling it and being efficient with helping the company. Integrity is number one. Don't lie on your resume. It's an easy way to not get a job. Especially at Arthrex, where they do double check your references, employment verification, in more detail than I've ever seen. So don't be misleading on your resume. I have to tell you, just a pet peeve of interviews. You might, find yourself being asked the question, something along the lines of, how do you stay organized, or how do you stay on task? And the question that drives me nuts is that I make lists, and I follow a list, and I just make sure that I do everything on my list. And that drives me nuts. It needs to be a little bit more planned. How do you prioritize? How do you make sure that what is important needs to get done first? That sort of thing. No matter where you interview, you're going to be asked something about your organization, and I just recommend not saying that you write down lists. If you can't tell, I hear that about 90% of the time. It's okay to edit your resume based on a job description. You don't need to make one resume and then just send it to everyone. I'd recommend that if there's a job you really want, you read the job posting, you read the qualifications, maybe the attributes they're looking for. And as long as it's honest, as long as you're not lying, I would put that in your resume. Because that's obviously what the hiring manager or the recruiter is looking for. As far as cover letters, it's really 50-50. If they're asking for one, I write one. Like I would write one if I were you, if they're asking for one. But you just don't know if they're going to read them, honestly. So if they're asking for one, write one, but it might not ever get read. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take your time and do it, though, because the person who's hiring that might be a deal breaker if you don't submit a cover letter. Research the company, know who you're interviewing with. We have folks come in who think that we make prosthetic legs and stuff. So we don't. And that would be easy to tell if you looked at our website at all. You would have a general idea of what we do. And last but not least on my list is social media. I don't think you need to make yourself hidden on social media. In fact, if the recruiters are doing a cursory glance at social media, it's kind of weird if you don't show up on social media. We want to know who you are, right? And so if we're hiring you for a professional job, you can expect that we're probably going to run your name through Facebook, Instagram. Just, out of curiosity, see if there's anything, crazy red flags. You don't need to hide. Just be careful of what you post. It's actually kind of nice when we can get to know someone a little bit, get a better idea of personality, that sort of thing. So.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I think we just have like 1 or 2 minutes before I want to get to the Q&A, but anybody else have any advice for our students who may want to pursue a career in the medical device industry?
I think the internship opportunities are key. With our agency, we started offering a sales internship program about 2 years ago, and I think we've got a 75% higher rate out of that program. The other 25% decided it wasn't what they thought it was, or it wasn't for them. But take advantage of these opportunities to get a taste for what the industry is, what it isn't. I jokingly say this in every interview for a new rep. Everybody thinks they want to be in medical device sales. They don't. You got to know what you're getting into. It's a challenging industry. Obviously, if I'm up at 5 some odd in the morning every day and not getting home some days till 11 o'clock at night, you need to be prepared for that. I think Sarah touching on know what the company does is always important when you are interviewing for an internship or a position. We with our agency, and I think it's true of a lot of agencies nationwide, we hire a lot of reps fresh out of college. We love we see a lot of college athletes. I think our sales team is very much a team environment, and any kind of experience with that you can bring up in the interview is going to be key, because we're not lone wolves. This isn't singles tennis. This is football or baseball or a team sport. We have to rely on our teammates in order to be successful and make it through every day. But that's kind of my spiel on it. For us, a sales internship is a 3 to 6 month program, and we're pretty flexible on what your schedule looks like. So if you're home for the summer and reach out to the local agency, they're always looking for 2 or 3 interns every summer.
All right, great, thank you. Lauren, do you want to bring up some of the student questions now?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And looks like some questions have come in. And if others have questions, feel free to continue to add additional questions. Gil, I'll start with you because I think you were just addressing this a little bit. But one of the students was, wanting to know, is sales experience required to find a sales experience or to find a sales position at Arthrex? So it sounds to me like you just mentioned that you do hire students directly from college, but it sounds like maybe you're looking for some internship experience. Would that be correct?
Not necessarily. It's a combination. Most of the time coming into the medical device sales role, if you're fresh out of college, you come in at what they call an associate level. These are typically salaried positions that we treat as a paid internship because you're going to spend a year learning the industry. You're going to do a fair amount of the grunt work, moving equipment, things of that nature, but it's all part of learning everything you need to know on a day-to-day basis to make the sales side of this function run. But the other side of that are the internship programs. If somebody, has a summer and they want to spend 3 months getting their feet wet, we start off with the back office function all the way to getting you into surgery and starting to learn the procedures and the products. So if you're interested in an entry-level role and coming in as an associate rep and learning under a senior team lead, those opportunities are fairly plentiful. For myself, I came into the industry at basically a lead rep role because I had OR experience and 10 years of business-to-business sales experience. I would say that's probably not the norm when breaking into medical device sales. For most, the pathway has been either an internship, which leads to the associate rep role. And trying to think, a lot of companies want some kind of sales experience, but I wouldn't say anymore that it's absolutely required. And that's what I was trying to think of. There's a couple of companies out there that bill themselves as the medical device sales college that are offering these 8 to 12 week medical device sales program. I'm 50-50 on those. They're very expensive. They do have a pretty good hire rate out of there, but at this point, I think the candidates we see coming out of medical sales device college are very mixed. So if that's something some of the students now are considering following their Furman degree, do your research before you spend the money on that. There are certainly ways in and opportunities to get in touch with these medical device companies and the hiring managers without spending $8,000 to $12,000 on a medical sales device training.
Thanks, Gil. And maybe could you just touch on, because I know that you actually work for a distributor
Sure.
rather than being employed by Arthrex. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
So I work for a distributor based out of Tampa, Florida, called MVP Orthopedics, and we represent most of the west coast of Florida. So we have a set geography, and we exclusively represent Arthrex products with our customers, our hospitals, our surgery centers. And we are basically 1 degree removed from working for Arthrex. We're all W-2 employees of MVP Orthopedics, and MVP handles the sales process for Arthrex in our geography. And that's the case all over the country. I think at last count, we had close to 60 distributors.
That's right.
Robert, that sounds about right.
That's about right. Distributors, but yeah, that's, I think, about 60 or so.
62 distributors, all based typically in a central large city and the surrounding geographies. But we handle management of all the sales numbers, product, and anything associated with supporting the physician customers on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Gil. I want to transition over to Rebecca. A question came in about a role as a medical illustrator. The student's curious about, is postgraduate education required? I know you mentioned that maybe doing an art major combined with some science classes might be a good fit. So what is Arthrex typically looking for in their medical illustrator positions?
That's a great question. So I actually did not attend a graduate program. It's something I'm still thinking about possibly in my future. I kind of applied here on a whim because I only had my bachelor's degree in medical illustration. So I figured it was a shot in the dark, but worth the risk. And when it worked out, I was super thankful because working here is amazing. So now I don't know when I want to stop to possibly get a graduate degree because it's so great. But we're looking for a senior medical illustrator. And for that position, they are looking for somebody who has a master's degree. There are 4 programs in the nation or in North America that offer that program. There's one in Chicago. There's one in Augusta, Georgia. John Hopkins is one. And there's a 4th one. I can't remember which it was. But for entry-level positions, we are currently looking for an intern medical illustrator. And for that position, we're just looking for somebody who's currently studying in the field of medical illustration at their school. So just looking for somebody who is in the middle of their studies, but can also create detailed, accurate work. Sorry, my lights keep turning off. That's all.
We're a green company, so we have to keep waving to keep the lights on.
After hours,
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate it. Robert, I think you'd probably be the best person to answer this question. There's a question about, do you all work with any medical devices that implement UV light for sterilization?
I don't think so. I saw that question. I was thinking there's gamma irradiation, EO, ethylene oxide, E-beam, and then autoclave would be kind of like a local sterilization that they would do in hospitals. But I couldn't think of one that was using UV light per se. I guess in our lab we have UV light to sterilize the hoods, but that's not necessarily for the product.
Thanks. And I'll stick with you for this question as well. Can you talk a little bit about Do you all use any AI technology, or do you market any AI technology through Arthrex?
We don't. I think the closest that we get is we have a system called our VIP shoulder implant. Essentially, it's a 3D model that they would take of the patient's glenoid, and to get perfect targeting for their initial pin placement, they use a CT image and then essentially 3D printing maps to get access so that the surgeon can get exactly where that 2-4 guide pin should go to initiate that surgical procedure. So it's not necessarily AI, but it is very high-end tech to ensure that we have excellent patient outcomes, and they're in the exact same position. You can imagine just approaching some of these surgical procedures that any type of guide or reference is very helpful. And in this case, it's like going bowling with the bumpers up. You'll hit the pins every time, and that's what this VIP software can do.
Thanks, Robert. I appreciate that. Let me get back. Well, this is an interesting question. So Furman is going to be offering a MAEX program. Those of you that are alumni may be familiar with the MAEX program, where our students in May have an opportunity to study. I think it's for 3 weeks. Is that correct, Dr. Wagenknecht? 3 weeks MAEX?
Our MAEX programs are about 3 weeks, yeah.
3 weeks, yeah. So there's going to be a program in partnership with Arthrex where our students will have the opportunity to come stay at the Naples campus and learn about medical device and to tour Arthrex and to connect with some of the professionals there at Arthrex. So the question is that something that would make a student stand out or to be competitive for a future job with Arthrex?
Oh, heck yeah. To me, I mean, Sarah might be best to confirm from a HR perspective, but anyone that has any, I guess, awareness of what we're trying to achieve in our market, they're going to have a leg up. To me, that's somebody that can be passionate about the potential role that they would have here at Arthrex. That's what we're primarily hoping to find, are people that are passionate about what they do. Whatever it is, we would just hopefully help wind you up and put you in the right direction, and you just go create some really cool stuff, whatever that might relate to. So I think that would absolutely be recognition worthy in a resume or any conversation you might have.
Any other thoughts on that question?
100%, other than if they go down to Naples for 3 weeks, they may not come back.
All right, great. Well, I know our time is coming to an end, so I think I'll end on this question. One of the questions, which I think is a great question. I know that Arthrex is typically ranked, has been ranked several years in a row as a top company to work for. So I would imagine the opportunities are very competitive. So what are some things that our students here at Furman can really put on their resume, can talk about an interview that's going to really make them stand out as a competitive applicant in this process?
Yeah, so I saw that question. I was thinking about that. Well, first of all, keep your eyes posted because job openings happen on a weekly basis. That's always changing. So keep your eyes peeled. Right now, we do have an entry-level job right now for HR assistant, because I know I had mentioned a few minutes ago that we don't frequently have those entry-level jobs. So don't be discouraged if you are graduating and you're looking for an entry-level position. Keep your eyes posted. Something about your resume has to pop for the recruiter to put your resume aside to call. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a relevant job. It has to show that you have drive. I know for the HR job, there's folks who are going to interview who have like bank teller experience and who have moved up within the bank to not necessarily a high level job, but it shows organization and moving up. And so let's see. And I'd also say with the interview, if you do get an interview with Arthrex, please be genuine, be yourself. You don't need to look up the best answer to interview questions and repeat what you found online. You probably won't get the job if you do that because we want to know that we're hiring the right personality fit as well. So gosh, I guess that's my main advice. I mean, there are challenges to getting an entry-level position, like I've said, but hopefully I've given you some input on what you can do to at least increase your chances.
I'd recommend on your resume, don't be sterile. We get thousands of resumes and they all look exactly the same. And that's, I think, by design from a lot of college programs, that this is the best layout. That's great, but the content, really critically, you cannot have mistakes in your resume. Allow your colleagues or your teachers, your professors, excuse me, to help you review these, because any type of mistake in a resume is very telling to a lot of us that, okay, this could have been, you could have just taken your time. So do not have mistakes in your resume. Send thank yous afterwards and have something quirky in there. Talk about how, if you love Star Wars, if you breed snakes, those are crazy things that I would love to talk to somebody about, because that's super unique. We need something a little bit more colorful than just what you've accomplished. Give us something that goes beyond what you learned at Furman, maybe, or an experience that you've had you're really passionate about. We just need to show and feel like you're excited about what you're doing, whatever that is.
And don't send us a book. When I was at Furman, one of my business courses was business writing, and I come from the world of the one-page resume. And I think that's been lost in recent years. The current record is 32 pages. Didn't read it, man. They call it a brag book now, I guess, but that's overkill. I need highlights. I need, any kind of medical experience. Like I said, if you were cleaning operating rooms, that's the kind of thing that matters in our world. Any kind of sales experience, but we don't need to know about all 14 extracurricular activities you did. Great, but I don't really care that much. I need the greatest hits. I think that's most important, because I know when I interviewed for my first medical device job, there were, I think they said 12,000 resumes submitted for that one opportunity. And I managed to sift through and work my way to the top because I stuck out. But that's it. I love if something quirky, just be yourself. I hear the same answers in interviews. The medical device college kids are specifically guilty of this because they've all been coached. You could do 4 interviews and have the exact same verbatim answers. Just be honest, be yourself. We'll figure out whether or not we like you pretty quickly.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate all of our panelists taking the time to be here tonight. Thank you, Dr. Wagenknecht, for facilitating this evening's panel. I will be reaching out to all of the students that were here in attendance tonight with just some follow-up tips and I will direct you to where you can find internship and full-time opportunities on the Arthrex website. So be looking for that follow-up email. But once again, a big thanks to all of our panelists and for Dr. Wagenknecht for being here, and to all of our students for joining us tonight. I hope everyone has a great evening.